Well, we believe the U.S. attorney is pressing forward with this case and may be presenting to a grand jury as soon as today. And we're, of course, working to learn more. And this is coming after the developments last night, where we learned that career prosecutors inside the office presented a memo to Lindsay Halligan, the newly installed U.S. attorney, recommending that she not bring charges, because they said that not only don't they believe that the office could win a conviction beyond a reasonable doubt in front of a jury, they don't even believe there's probable cause to believe that a crime has been committed. That's a much lower standard. And Justice Department guidelines would dictate that you have to at least believe you have a good chance to win in front of a jury to bring a case. So lots of people inside that office don't think this case should be brought. But nonetheless, the White House obviously has been pressing, and Donald Trump has been publicly saying that he believes James Comey should be fired, should be charged, I'm sorry. And he forced the resignation of the previous U.S. Attorney, Eric Siebert, who we are told was not on board with bringing these charges. And so this is where we are right now. We're watching to see whether this office presses forward with the case, whether there are any resignations or firings among career prosecutors who aren't on board with this case, and then what happens next, Anna.
And again, this testimony was from 5 years ago. Can you provide some more context about what exactly he was discussing in that congressional hearing? And wasn't his testimony and allegations of lying already part of an Inspector General investigation, Ken?
Yeah, it was. And this is stuff that's been publicly aired for years. This was a big Senate hearing on the FBI Trump-Russia investigation. James Comey testified. He was grilled for hours by senators. We believe that in part this case focuses on an exchange that he had with Senator Ted Cruz, where Cruz had asked him about a previous question that was put to him by Senator Charles Grassley way back in 2017 about whether he had authorized leaks to the media. And in particular, this is about a disclosure that his deputy, Andrew McCabe, made to the Wall Street Journal about investigations into the Clinton Foundation. Essentially, Comey said he didn't authorize it. McCabe had taken the position that he did at some point. The Inspector General looked into this and sided with Comey, essentially decided that there's no evidence to support the idea that Comey did authorize it. McCabe had the authority to talk to the media anyway as the deputy director. He didn't need Comey's permission. But look, even if there is divergent accounts about what happened there, that doesn't add up to perjury. In order to make a perjury charge, you have to show that James Comey knew that he was lying, was intentionally trying to mislead Congress. And I'm not aware of any evidence that supports that. We'll have to see what, if anything, this case does to change that.
Monica, this has been a longstanding feud, to say the least, between President Trump and James Comey. He fired Comey back in 2017. Comey wouldn't pledge loyalty to him, pledge loyalty to the Constitution. Tell us more what you're learning of the president's pressure campaign.
Well, this has really been an explicit pressure campaign from President Trump, Anna, against people not just like James Comey, but others that he has name-checked over the weekend. In fact, remember, he directed his attorney general, specifically writing in a post on social media, Pam : and then listing why he believes James Comey and why he believes California Senator Adam Schiff or New York Attorney General Letitia James should potentially face some charges as well. And in that kind of description, it's remarkable because he really says quite clearly what he wants to do. And he is saying, quote, it's killing our reputation and credibility, he says, because of the delay. And he is really being urgent in his words here, saying that, quote, justice must be served now. So he has been completely direct in what he would like to see happen here. And when he was asked about that, and when the White House was pressed on trying to respond to some of these claims that he is making, the president admitted that, OK, if somebody is not guilty, fine, he's fine with that. But if they are, that is where he wants to see some action. He did concede that. And the White House is saying that this isn't an issue that he's taking up with his attorney general in terms of being unhappy with her. He says he has total confidence in her, but that it's some of these other key prosecutors you've just been talking about that he wants to see more action from. Anna.
Monica Alba, thank you for your reporting. Joyce, to bring an indictment, would a grand jury have to sign off? And how often do they fail to indict?
So typically grand juries will indict cases that prosecutors put in front of them because prosecutors are careful to answer any questions that they have up front with presentations of witnesses or discussions of the law. Federal grand juries consist of 16 to 23 members. It takes 12 votes to obtain an indictment. So that's the target that the government will be setting its sights on here. But I want to go back to something that Ken said, because I think it's incredibly important. It only takes probable cause to get an indictment. That means it's more likely or not that a crime was committed. But the standard that prosecutors are required to follow by the federal principles of prosecution, sort of a prosecutor's Bible, is that prosecutors believe that they can both obtain a conviction at trial and sustain it on appeal. And in a case like this, where career prosecutors have written to a brand new, inexperienced U.S. attorney to say, not only do we not have what the federal principles of prosecution require, we don't even have probable cause, that's a moment where everyone should perhaps reconsider this case. That's not going to happen, but prosecutors may be in a situation where a grand jury won't indict.
Andrew, the president has repeatedly and publicly called for Comey to be charged with something, anything really. What kind of risk or ramifications are there to bring charges if the evidence is weak?
I think it's really important not to normalize this moment. We've had enormous political scandals in this country when we've had presidents or the FBI director direct criminal investigations of their enemies. Now we have a sitting president saying that there should be an indictment of somebody. Their current administration in the Department of Justice is balking, and what has had to happen in order to make that wish come true is getting rid of the person was there, putting in somebody who is new, who does not know the case, who's now been on the case, like on the office for a day.
Who's never been a prosecutor before, by the way.
Never been a prosecutor, no criminal experience, and is now appears to be doing the president's bidding. This is, just to put a fine point on it, the end of the rule of law in this country. This is not what the rule of law is in America. It would be the same whether we had a Democratic or a Republican president doing the exact same thing. It's not, this should not be a partisan issue. This is not how the Department of Justice and the rule of law is supposed to work in this country. And just to the end point is I would not be surprised, even though Joyce is absolutely correct that the standard is very low, in the grand jury, you could see what has happened already in D.C. and in Los Angeles, which is grand jurors balking and saying we're not going to go forward.
And yet, Ken, this could be just the first and may not be the last. It's just one investigation into Comey. What do we know about other potential investigations in other districts?
I'm aware of at least one additional criminal investigation into Comey regarding his handling of classified information at the FBI. The New York Times is reporting that there may be a third. I think Andrew just made the fundamental point, though, because it's not just Comey. There's John Brennan is under investigation. Barack Obama may be under investigation by this Justice Department. Lesser-known names like Chris Krebs and Miles Taylor. We have not seen this before, and this is not how it's supposed to work. That where Donald Trump's political enemies are being investigated by the Justice Department because he wishes it to be so. This is an incredibly fraught moment in our democracy, and the rule of law is absolutely at risk, and everyone needs to pay attention to that, Anna.
Joyce, what kind of pressure do you think other U.S. attorneys are under right now? Which offices might you be watching?
Well, undoubtedly, this is a moment where intimidation is running rampant. We've already seen one U.S. attorney forced out, and that's intended as a warning to other U.S. attorneys who will now have to make, all 93 of them, a decision about where their personal red line is. You know, Anna, Andrew says something incredibly important here when he says that this is the end of the rule of law if Donald Trump is permitted to continue on this path. Something that I think we need to look at as carefully as how U.S. attorneys react is how the remaining guardrails function. And by that, I mean grand juries, trial judges, and trial juries. And we are now in a moment where the system will be tested against Donald Trump. I think it's encouraging that we've already seen grand juries refusing to indict. There will undoubtedly, if Jim Comey is indicted, be motions for selective and vindictive prosecution. A judge will have the chance to dismiss these cases early if he or she finds that they were improperly brought. And of course, trial juries will ultimately weigh in on the evidence. So Donald Trump can't snap his fingers and obtain revenge convictions, but it's troubling that he's on track to obtain prosecutions.
Andrew, you had called this week a break glass moment, and that was even before this new reporting from Ken on this potential indictment against James Comey. There's been so much happening with this administration's apparent efforts to weaponize the government. Where does this rank for you?
This is, you think that there's no bottom and things get worse. And I do think this is a new low for this president. It is coming on the heels, let's remember, of the huge fiasco and affront to the First Amendment of the Constitution with respect to Jimmy Kimmel. It is coming on the heels of the reporting by Ken and his colleagues with respect to the border czar, where essentially you're going to have a prosecution where there's balking as to whether there's any evidence to support it. But when it comes to loyalists, they're not going forward and killing investigations, even if the reporting is that they took a bag of cash with $50,000 in it, and that person is still working for the public. So you're seeing incredible corruption that is being reported on, and this would be really sort of another nail in the coffin for what is really supposed to be the city on the hill for the rule of law and a system of American justice that people had looked up to, but is going to make us no different than the countries that people look to around the world as having show trials. And it's going to be really incumbent on people that Joyce pointed out, for jurors, grand jurors, trial judges to really adhere to the rule of law in their hearts and their actions to counteract that if they really believe that America should be what it stands for.